Long before the world knew him as one of basketball's greatest players, Shaquille O'Neal understood what it meant to grow up without luxury. His childhood wasn't defined by fame or fortune. It was shaped by discipline, sacrifice, and the lessons taught by the people who raised him. His mother worked tirelessly to provide for the family, and his stepfather, a strict Army sergeant, expected hard work, respect, and responsibility every single day. Money wasn't always plentiful, but excuses were never accepted. If something needed to be done, everyone did their part. Those early years stayed with Shaq long after he became famous. As his basketball career exploded, his life transformed beyond anything he could have imagined. He became an NBA champion, signed endorsement deals worth millions, appeared in movies and television shows, and built businesses that stretched far beyond sports. Fans saw the larger-than-life personality, the jokes, the dancing, the unforgettable smile. But behind the public image was someone who never forgot where he came from. Friends often noticed something unusual about him. Whenever Shaq entered a store, he paid attention to people. He wasn't just looking at products on the shelves. He watched families, parents with children, elderly couples, and anyone who seemed to be carrying a burden. Years of success had given him wealth, but they had also given him the ability to recognize quiet struggles that many others overlooked. He believed kindness didn't always require a speech or a spotlight. Sometimes it only required noticing. On an ordinary afternoon, with no media events scheduled and no cameras following him, Shaq decided to stop at a local electronics store. He needed a few items for his home and expected the trip to take only a few minutes. He wore comfortable clothes, hoping to keep a low profile, though his towering height made anonymity almost impossible. A few customers smiled and whispered to one another after recognizing him, but he greeted them politely and continued browsing the aisles. The store buzzed with the familiar sounds of shopping carts rolling across the floor, cash registers beeping, and quiet conversations between customers. Employees stocked shelves while families compared prices on televisions, laptops, and household electronics. Everything seemed perfectly ordinary. Yet within those ordinary moments, something unforgettable was about to happen. As Shaq walked toward the checkout area carrying the items he intended to buy, his attention shifted to a nearby register. A middle-aged man stood there clutching a small box. His clothes were neat but worn, and exhaustion showed clearly on his face. Beside him lay a folder filled with medical papers. The cashier gently explained the total. The man stared at the payment screen. He reached into his wallet once, then again. He counted every dollar with trembling fingers. The expression on his face wasn't anger, it was quiet heartbreak. Shaq slowed his steps. Without saying a word, he watched from a distance. Something about that man's eyes reminded him of a truth he had carried throughout his entire life. Sometimes the biggest battles are completely invisible. The man standing at the checkout counter had no idea that someone was watching him. His name, his background, and the details of his personal struggle were unknown to everyone around him. To the other shoppers, he was just another customer having trouble with a purchase. But to Shaquille O'Neal, he was a person going through a difficult moment, and that was enough. Shaq had spent years hearing people say that celebrities lived in a different world. In many ways, they were right. His life had changed dramatically. He could buy things most people only dreamed about. He could walk into a store and never worry about whether his card would be declined. But he remembered a time when his family had to make difficult choices. He remembered watching his mother work endlessly. He remembered the importance of every dollar. He remembered how a small act of help from another person could mean everything when a family was struggling. Those memories were part of who he was. The cashier looked at the man standing in front of her and tried to offer assistance. The customer quietly explained that he was short on money. He wasn't asking for someone to pay the entire bill. He was simply hoping there was another solution. His voice carried a mixture of embarrassment and frustration. He had probably replayed this situation in his mind many times before coming to the store. He had probably calculated the cost, checked his bank account, and convinced himself everything would work out. But standing there in that moment, reality was different. The item he needed was not something he wanted for entertainment or comfort. It was connected to a medical need. It represented care, responsibility, and love for someone important in his life. Shaq watched the man's shoulders drop slightly. That small movement said everything. The world often notices people when they succeed. It celebrates the athlete who wins championships, the businessman who builds companies, and the celebrity who appears on television. But Shaq believed a person's true character was revealed in moments when nobody was celebrating. He slowly walked closer. At first, the man didn't recognize him. He was too focused on solving his problem. His mind was somewhere else, thinking about bills, family, and what would happen if he couldn't find a way to pay. Then he heard a deep voice beside him. "How much is it?" The man turned around. For a second he froze. Standing next to him was Shaquille O'Neal, the same person whose basketball games he may have watched years earlier, the same man whose name was known around the world. But Shaq wasn't standing there like a superstar. He was standing there like a human being who saw another human being struggling. The man looked confused, almost unsure if he was understanding what was happening. Shaq simply smiled. He didn't make a big announcement. He didn't call anyone over. He didn't want attention. He just wanted to help. And in that quiet moment inside a simple store, a small decision began a story that would later remind millions of people that kindness does not need an audience to matter. Shaq stood beside the checkout counter while the stranger tried to understand what was happening. For a moment, the man looked back and forth between the cashier and the 7-foot-tall basketball legend standing next to him. It felt unreal. Someone he had only seen on television was now standing beside him during one of the most stressful moments of his day. But Shaquille O'Neal wasn't thinking about fame. He wasn't thinking about his championships, his records, or the millions of people who knew his name. He was thinking about the look on the man's face moments earlier. That look of worry, that feeling of having a problem you couldn't solve. Shaq had seen it before. Growing up, he watched his family make sacrifices. He understood that sometimes people didn't need someone to completely change their lives. Sometimes they just needed someone to make one difficult moment a little easier. The cashier quietly explained the situation again. The total wasn't something the man could comfortably afford at that moment. Shaq didn't hesitate. He took out his payment card and told the cashier he would take care of it. The man immediately tried to refuse. He wasn't expecting anyone to help him, especially not someone as famous as Shaquille O'Neal. Pride made him uncomfortable accepting such a generous gesture. He had walked into the store believing he needed to handle his own problems, but Shaq stopped him. He reminded him that everyone needs help sometimes. The words were simple, but they carried a powerful message. Shaq wasn't treating the man like someone who was helpless. He was treating him like someone who had simply encountered a difficult day. That difference mattered. Many people with wealth and influence choose to display their generosity publicly. They announce donations, attend events, and allow cameras to capture their good deeds. Shaq had done charitable work publicly as well, but moments like this were different. There was no stage, no microphone, no crowd. Just a stranger, a cashier, and a quiet act of compassion. The man looked down, overwhelmed by emotion. For someone who had walked into the store feeling alone, the kindness of a stranger had changed the entire atmosphere of the moment. He thanked Shaq repeatedly. Shaq smiled and told him there was no need to make it a big deal. But to the man, it was a big deal, because sometimes people don't remember the amount of money someone spends. They remember the moment someone noticed them. They remember the moment when they felt invisible, and someone stopped long enough to see them. As Shaq walked away from the counter, he didn't look back for attention or recognition. He simply continued his shopping as if nothing unusual had happened. But for the man he helped, that ordinary afternoon became a memory he would carry for the rest of his life. And that was exactly how Shaquille O'Neal wanted it. Because for him, true success was never measured only by what a person could achieve. It was measured by what they were willing to give when someone else needed it most. As Shaquille O'Neal continued walking through the store, the moment at the checkout counter stayed behind with the people who witnessed it. The employees quietly looked at one another, still processing what they had just seen. They were used to customers coming and going every day, but this was different. They had watched one of the most famous athletes in the world stop everything simply because he noticed someone struggling. There was no hesitation, no complicated decision, just kindness. For the man who received the help, the experience was difficult to put into words. A few minutes earlier, he had been standing there feeling defeated, wondering how he would solve a problem that seemed impossible. He had walked into the store carrying a heavy burden that nobody else could see. Then, unexpectedly, someone stepped in. The help itself mattered, but what meant even more was the way Shaq offered it. He didn't make the man feel embarrassed. He didn't make him feel small. He didn't treat him like someone who needed to be rescued. Instead, Shaq treated him with respect. That was something the man would remember long after the purchase was forgotten. Throughout his life, Shaquille O'Neal had experienced both sides of attention. He knew what it felt like to be celebrated by millions of fans, to hear crowds cheering his name, and to be recognized everywhere he went. But he also understood something many people never see about fame. A person can be surrounded by thousands of people and still feel alone. That was why moments of genuine human connection mattered so much to him. Shaq often spoke about the lessons his family taught him. His mother raised him to understand the importance of giving back. His stepfather taught him discipline and responsibility. Those values remained with him even after he became wealthy. The world saw the superstar. His teammates saw the leader. His fans saw the entertainer. But moments like this showed another side of Shaquille O'Neal, the person behind the famous name. Someone who believed success came with responsibility. Someone who remembered the struggles that shaped him. Someone who understood that a small gesture could create a huge impact in another person's life. The story eventually spread, and people around the world praised Shaq for his generosity. But those who knew him were not surprised. They had seen this side of him many times before. From helping strangers to supporting communities, Shaq had built a reputation for using his success to make life easier for others. He never forgot the feeling of needing help, and he never wanted someone else to feel forgotten. For him, wealth was not just about buying expensive things or living a comfortable life. It was about having the ability to solve problems when he saw them. Years of hard work had given him opportunities, but his character determined how he used those opportunities. And on that ordinary day in a simple store, Shaquille O'Neal proved something that had nothing to do with basketball. The biggest people are not always the ones who stand the tallest. Sometimes they are the ones who are willing to bend down and help someone else stand again. After leaving the checkout area, Shaquille O'Neal continued his shopping, but the impact of what happened remained with everyone who had witnessed it. For the employees inside the store, it was a moment they would never forget. They had seen thousands of customers walk through those doors, but very few had ever shown that kind of compassion so naturally. There was something different about the way Shaq helped. He didn't act like he was doing a favor. He acted like he was doing what any person should do when they see someone facing a difficult situation. That simple attitude was what made the moment powerful. The stranger he helped stood there for a few seconds after Shaq walked away, still trying to process what had happened. He had entered the store focused on a problem. His mind had been filled with worry, questions, and fear about what he would do next. But he left with something more valuable than the item he purchased. He left knowing that someone cared. For many people, asking for help is one of the hardest things they can do. They worry about being judged. They worry about appearing weak. They worry that others will see their struggles before they see their humanity. Shaq understood that feeling. His own journey had taught him that every person carries a story that others may never know. The world had seen his success, but they had not seen every sacrifice behind it. They didn't see the young Shaq working to improve himself every day. They didn't see the pressure of carrying expectations. They didn't see the moments when he had doubts or challenges. They only saw the finished product. But Shaq remembered the process. That memory influenced the way he treated people. He knew that a person's situation could change quickly. Someone who is struggling today could become successful tomorrow. Someone who needed help today could one day be the person helping others. Life had a way of changing people's positions. That belief stayed with him. As the story of his kindness reached more people, many focused on the money he spent. But the real value of the moment was never the payment. Money can solve a problem temporarily, but kindness can stay with someone forever. The stranger would likely remember that day, not because of the receipt or the purchase, but because during a difficult moment, a person with every reason to ignore him chose to stop. Shaq could have walked past. He could have looked away like many others did. He could have assumed someone else would help, but he didn't. That decision reflected something much deeper than generosity. It reflected empathy. Throughout his career, Shaq was known for his powerful presence on the basketball court. He was a dominant force who could change the outcome of a game with his strength and determination. But outside the arena, he showed another kind of strength. The strength to notice, the strength to care, the strength to help when nobody was asking him to. And that was the moment people began to understand that Shaquille O'Neal's greatest victories were not always measured by championship rings. Some victories happened quietly. Some happened when nobody was watching. And some happened when one person decided that another person's struggle mattered. The story of what happened inside that store continued to remind people of a side of Shaquille O'Neal that many fans rarely saw. To the world, Shaq was a basketball icon. He was the unstoppable center who dominated the NBA courts, the player who lifted championship trophies, and the larger-than-life personality who made millions laugh. His name was associated with greatness, success, and entertainment. But behind all of that was a man who had always paid attention to ordinary people. Shaq never forgot the neighborhoods where he grew up. He never forgot the lessons his family gave him when he was young. His mother often reminded him that having more meant he had a greater responsibility to help others. Those words stayed with him. Even after becoming wealthy, he never wanted success to create distance between himself and everyone else. He believed that fame should not make a person feel more important than others. If anything, he believed it created a bigger responsibility. That was why moments like the one inside the store mattered so much. It wasn't about making a headline. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about responding to what was right in front of him. A person needed help. Shaq helped. Simple. But sometimes the simplest actions reveal the most about someone's character. The stranger who received Shaq's kindness likely never expected that his difficult moment would become a story people talked about. He was not trying to meet a celebrity. He was not hoping someone famous would notice him. He was just trying to take care of someone he loved. And that was exactly what Shaq saw. He saw a person trying his best. He saw responsibility. He saw love. Those were things Shaq understood because they had been part of his own life. Growing up, he watched his family make sacrifices for him. He understood that parents and loved ones often put their own needs aside to protect the people they care about. That kind of love leaves a lasting impression. It teaches people that sometimes the greatest gift is not receiving something for yourself. It is being able to give something when someone else needs it. Years after becoming an NBA legend, Shaq continued to carry that lesson with him. Whether he was supporting communities, helping families, or simply making a stranger's day easier, his actions showed that his definition of success was much bigger than money. For Shaq, success was not just about how many people knew his name. It was about how many people felt better because he was there. That afternoon in the store was only a few minutes long. But for the person he helped, those few minutes created a memory that could last a lifetime. A moment of stress became a moment of hope. A moment of embarrassment became a moment of kindness. A moment when the world felt heavy became a reminder that good people still existed. And that was the true power of what Shaquille O'Neal did. He didn't just pay a bill. He gave someone a reason to believe that their struggles mattered. He showed that even the biggest stars can still choose to see the smallest moments. Because greatness is not only found in the records a person breaks or the awards they receive. Sometimes greatness is found in the quiet choices nobody expects you to make. As time passed, the story of Shaquille O'Neal's kindness became another example of something people had slowly begun to understand about him. The public knew him as a giant on the basketball court, a man who could overpower defenders, dominate games, and change the outcome of a championship series. But the people who followed his life closely knew there was another side to him, a side that cared deeply about people, a side that noticed struggles hidden behind everyday faces, a side that remembered the difficult moments that shaped him. For Shaq, success had never been only about what he achieved. It was about what he could do with the opportunities he had been given. Growing up, he didn't have everything handed to him. His journey required patience, discipline, and determination. He learned early that talent alone was not enough. A person needed character, responsibility, and the willingness to keep moving forward even when life was challenging. Those lessons became the foundation of the man he became. When he entered the NBA, millions of people saw the physical gifts. They saw his incredible height, his strength, and his ability to dominate opponents. They saw the superstar who could sell out arenas and attract worldwide attention. But fame also brought a new challenge. People began seeing Shaquille O'Neal as someone different from them, someone unreachable, someone living in a world where ordinary problems didn't exist. Shaq understood why people thought that way, but he never wanted to become disconnected from reality. He knew that money and fame could change a person's lifestyle, but they did not erase the basic emotions everyone shared. Everyone knew what worry felt like. Everyone knew what disappointment felt like. Everyone knew what it meant to need someone to care. That was why he continued to pay attention to moments that others ignored. The store incident was not powerful because of the amount of money involved. It was powerful because of the timing. The man was not standing there during a celebration. He was not surrounded by cameras. He was not asking the world for attention. He was simply facing a problem and trying to handle it with dignity. Shaq recognized that dignity. He understood that many people struggle silently because they don't want others to know what they are going through. They smile in public while carrying heavy burdens privately. Sometimes all it takes is one person noticing, one person stopping, one person saying, "I can help." That was what made Shaq's action meaningful. He didn't just solve a financial problem. He reminded someone that they were not alone. The impact of that moment went far beyond the store. Stories like this often inspire people because they reveal something important about human nature. Kindness spreads. One person's generosity can encourage another person to do the same. A small action can create a chain reaction that reaches people the original person may never meet. Shaq understood that influence was not only about being famous, it was about using that influence in a positive way. Throughout his career, he had opportunities to focus only on himself. He could have spent his entire life chasing personal achievements and protecting his own success, but he chose another path. He chose to use his position to make a difference. That decision reflected the values he carried from childhood. Respect people, treat others fairly, help when you can, never forget where you came from. Those principles remained important even after he became one of the wealthiest and most recognizable athletes in the world. The world often measures greatness through visible achievements, championships, awards, records, millions of fans. But Shaq's life showed that there are other ways to measure greatness. Sometimes it is measured by the person who leaves a conversation feeling valued. Sometimes it is measured by the stranger who receives unexpected kindness. Sometimes it is measured by the moments that never appear on television but reveal the true heart of a person. The man in the store probably never imagined that an ordinary shopping trip would become one of the most memorable experiences of his life. He walked in carrying a problem. He walked out carrying a story. A story about a basketball legend who could have ignored him but chose not to. A story about a celebrity who didn't need recognition but still chose compassion. A story about how one small decision could create a lasting impact. And for Shaquille O'Neal, that moment represented something bigger than generosity. It represented the kind of person he always wanted to be, not just someone who was known, but someone who mattered. As the years went by, Shaquille O'Neal continued to show that his influence extended far beyond basketball. The game had made him famous, but the way he treated people made him respected. Many athletes become remembered for their statistics, their trophies, and their records. Those things become part of history. But for Shaq, the moments that mattered most were often the ones that never appeared in a box score. They were moments with real people. Moments where someone needed encouragement. Moments where a small act could create a powerful memory. The incident inside the store represented something that had always been a part of Shaq's personality. He had never viewed success as a reason to separate himself from others. Instead, he believed success gave him the ability to reach people he otherwise might never have met. He knew that money could open doors, but compassion could open hearts. That belief came from his own experiences. Before the fame and the fortune, Shaq was just a young boy trying to find his place in the world. He grew up learning that life would not always be easy. There would be challenges, disappointments, and moments when things didn't go according to plan. But he also learned something equally important. Hard times did not define a person. The way someone responded to those hard times did. That lesson followed him into adulthood. When he became one of the most recognizable people on the planet, he could have easily forgotten the struggles of ordinary people. He could have surrounded himself only with people who lived the same lifestyle. But Shaq continued to interact with people from all backgrounds. He talked with fans, he helped strangers, he supported communities, he listened to stories. Because deep down, he understood that everyone wanted the same thing: to feel seen and respected. The man in the store was not looking for attention. He was not trying to meet a celebrity. He was simply facing a moment of uncertainty and hoping to find a solution. Shaq's decision changed that moment completely. What could have been remembered as a painful experience became a story of kindness. Instead of walking away feeling embarrassed, the man walked away knowing that someone cared enough to stop. That feeling can be more powerful than people realize. A person may forget many details about a difficult day. They may forget the exact words that were spoken or the small details of what happened, but they rarely forget how someone made them feel. Shaq understood that. He knew that helping someone was not always about making a dramatic change. Sometimes it was about making one difficult moment easier. Sometimes it was about giving someone a reason to smile when they were close to giving up. That philosophy shaped many of his actions throughout his life. He became known not only as a basketball superstar but also as someone who believed in giving back. Whether supporting young athletes, helping families, or surprising people who needed assistance, Shaq continued to use his success as a tool to create positive moments. For him, generosity was not a performance, it was a responsibility. The world often expects famous people to make grand gestures. People notice million-dollar donations and major public events. Those actions are important, but Shaq's smaller moments revealed something personal. A person's character is often revealed when there is nothing to gain. There was no championship trophy waiting at the end of that store visit, no award, no standing ovation, no crowd cheering his name. There was only a simple choice: help or walk away. Shaq chose to help. And that choice showed the kind of person he was when nobody was asking him to prove anything. The story also reminded people of an important truth: kindness does not require someone to be wealthy. Shaq had the ability to solve the problem financially, but the lesson was much bigger than money. Anyone can make a difference. A kind word, a helping hand, a moment of patience, a simple act of understanding. These things may seem small, but to someone going through a difficult time, they can mean everything. That afternoon, Shaquille O'Neal didn't just help a stranger complete a purchase. He created a memory that showed people around the world that behind the famous name, behind the championship rings, and behind the larger-than-life personality was a man who still valued something simple. Treat people with kindness, because in the end, greatness is not only about how high someone can rise, it is also about how many people they help rise with them. As the story continued to inspire people, many began looking beyond the moment itself and started asking a bigger question: what makes someone truly successful? For decades, Shaquille O'Neal had been celebrated for his achievements on the basketball court. His name was written alongside some of the greatest athletes in history. He had reached the highest levels of professional sports, earned the respect of teammates and opponents, and built a legacy that would last for generations. But moments like the one in the store showed that his legacy was not only built through basketball, it was built through choices. Every person gets opportunities to reveal who they really are. Some moments happen in front of thousands of people. Others happen quietly when nobody is paying attention. Those quiet moments often tell the deepest stories. Shaq had every reason to ignore what was happening that day. He was busy. He was famous. He could have convinced himself that someone else would help, but he didn't. He saw another person struggling, and he decided that the struggle mattered. That decision reflected a mindset he had carried for years. He believed that having the ability to help someone came with an obligation to do so. Growing up, Shaq learned that respect was not something a person demanded because of their status. Respect was something a person earned through their actions. A person's title, wealth, or fame did not determine their value. Their character did. That belief shaped the way he interacted with people everywhere he went. Whether he was speaking with fans, meeting children, or helping strangers, he tried to make people feel important. He understood that a few minutes of attention from someone they admired could create a memory they would carry forever. The man inside the store experienced exactly that. He probably expected a difficult conversation with the cashier. He probably expected to leave without finding a solution. He probably never imagined that a basketball legend would notice his situation and step forward. Life often changes in unexpected ways. Sometimes help arrives from places people never expect. The beauty of the moment was not that Shaq had money. Many wealthy people have money. The beauty was that he had awareness. He noticed. He cared. He acted. Those three things separated the moment from a simple transaction. As news of Shaq's generosity spread, many people shared their own stories of kindness. They talked about times when a stranger helped them, encouraged them, or gave them hope during a difficult period. The story became a reminder that every person has the ability to create meaningful moments. Not everyone can change someone's financial situation. Not everyone can solve a major problem, but everyone can choose kindness. Everyone can choose compassion. Everyone can choose to care. For Shaquille O'Neal, that choice had always been important. His life showed that success does not remove a person's responsibility to others. In fact, it can increase it. The more influence someone has, the more opportunities they have to make a difference. Shaq understood that his name carried power. His actions reached people. and he wanted those actions to represent something positive. Years from now, people will remember Shaquille O'Neal for many things. They will remember the championships. They will remember the unstoppable dunks. They will remember the dominant performances. But they will also remember moments like this. Moments where the cameras were not rolling. Moments where there was no trophy involved. Moments where he simply chose to be kind. Because at the end of a person's life, the most meaningful memories are rarely about what they owned. They are about what they gave. They are about the lives they touched. They are about the people who felt better because that person was there. And on that ordinary day in an ordinary store, Shaquille O'Neal created one of those moments. A moment that proved the biggest impact a person can make is not always measured by how many people know their name. Sometimes it is measured by the one person who will never forget what they did. The story of Shaquille O'Neal's kindness did not end when he walked out of the store. For most people, it would have been just another afternoon. They would have finished shopping, returned home, and moved on with their lives. But for one stranger, that day became a memory that would remain forever. It was a reminder that even during difficult moments, unexpected kindness could appear when it was needed most. The man who had stood at the checkout counter feeling worried and helpless left with something more powerful than the item he needed. He left with hope. He left knowing that someone had noticed his struggle. He left knowing that for a brief moment someone had chosen to make his burden lighter. That is the kind of impact Shaquille O'Neal valued. Not the attention, not the praise, not the headlines. The human connection. Throughout his life, Shaq had experienced the highest levels of success. He became an NBA champion, a businessman, an entertainer, and one of the most recognizable figures in the world. But the older he became, the more he understood that success was not only about reaching the top, it was about remembering the people who were still trying to climb. It was about looking back and helping others move forward. The world often celebrates people for what they achieve. It celebrates the goals they reach, the records they break, and the wealth they create. But true greatness is revealed by what people do when they have nothing to prove. That day in the store, Shaq had nothing to gain. There was no camera waiting, no award ceremony, no public announcement. There was simply a person in need and a choice to make, help or ignore. Shaq chose compassion, and that choice reflected the values that had guided him from the beginning. His mother taught him the importance of giving. His family taught him discipline. His experiences taught him humility. All of those lessons stayed with him even after achieving worldwide fame. Because no matter how successful someone becomes, they never stop being human. Everyone faces challenges. Everyone has difficult days. Everyone needs kindness sometimes. Shaquille O'Neal understood that better than most. He knew that a person could have everything and still appreciate a simple gesture. He knew that a small act could create a big memory. And he knew that the greatest rewards in life were not always the ones people could see. Some rewards came from knowing you helped someone when they needed it. Some victories happened away from the spotlight. Some championships were not won with a basketball in hand. They were won through kindness. The moment inside that store showed a different side of a man the world thought it already knew. People knew Shaq the athlete. They knew Shaq the entertainer. They knew Shaq the superstar. But that day they saw Shaq the human being, a person who stopped, a person who cared, a person who understood that success means very little if it cannot be used to help others. Years later, fans would continue to remember this kind of generosity because it represented something everyone could understand. Fame fades, records are eventually broken, achievements become history, but the way someone makes another person feel can last forever. Shaquille O'Neal's greatest moments were not only the ones displayed on giant screens in crowded arenas. Some of his greatest moments happened quietly, away from the cameras, away from the applause, in simple places where one person had the chance to make another person's day better. And that is what made the moment unforgettable. Because in the end, the size of a person's success is not only measured by how much they have, it is measured by how much good they are willing to share. Shaquille O'Neal spent years proving he was one of the biggest names in sports history. But moments like this proved something even more important. A person's true greatness is not found in the height they reach. It is found in the kindness they leave behind.